Hello, welcome back. Today it's all about the rules. Exactly. HeroQuest. We're going to do spells, magic, things like that. I have a battle mat laid out with maps, the battlefield or the board, the game board. So we've got some miniatures here. We've got terrain. We've got dice. We've got cards. Going to do a lot of demonstration, a lot of explanation, and give you a little bit of insight into when things might be useful. I'm going to put up a poll. Feel free to take part in that poll. It's completely up to you if you want to do so or not. I totally understand. By all means, ask questions. How are you doing, Fred Huber? Nice to have you. Fred Huber is patron. I'm going to get into this fairly quickly. I don't want to muck around. For those who want to know what is happening next week, stick around and I will let you know. This is probably going to take me about an hour to get through all the different spells. And then I will let you know what is happening next week. Okay, let's get started. Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about role-playing games. Is it really? No, it's more like a board game. A board game, HeroQuest. HeroQuest is really one of my favorite games to play as a teenager. I played it with my family many, many times. We played it for years. We played it till it completely fell apart, and there's really nothing left of it. That's how much we played it, and all the family would play it together, including my 4.5-year-old youngest sister. Yes, our 4.5-year-old youngest sister would play with us, and I was the oldest. I'm the one who bought the game. Anyway, that's not why you're here. What you're here for is how do the various spells work. Now, there are elemental spells in this game. That we have earth, fire, water, air, and then we have the dread spells that are used by the bad spellcasters, the ones that aren't controlled by your players or playing the heroes. No, Zargon gets to use the dread spells. So we're going to go through all of the elemental spells first, then I'm going to go through all of the dread spells after. And I want this to be very much an explanation and demonstration, which is why we're going to be going to this screen with the board game for primarily almost all of this presentation. Okay, here we are. This is it. So the first thing you'll need to realize is you're not always going to be using combat dice when you're casting spells. One of the most common things to occur is this is where mind points come into play. And the number of points that your character has is very important. And they often rely on 6-sided dice. So you get a certain number of 6-sided dice when you're dealing with mind points, which is usually when you're dealing with spell casting. Okay, now that I've said that, what does this actually look like? How does it sort of play out? Let's start off with the first one. Pardon me, it is going into autumn and my voice is going to completely pack up on me. First one, let's have a look here. We have fire. So fire spell, courage. So our first one is courage. How does courage work? This spell may be cast on any one hero, including yourself. The next time that hero attacks, they may roll 2 extra combat dice. The spell is broken. The spell is broken the moment a monster is no longer in the hero's line of sight. So, in other words, do not cast this unless you can see monsters. Don't bother using it otherwise. So how might this look? Courage. I'm just removing some of these doors and moving our characters around a little bit. And we'll put our hero in here. We'll put our dwarf over here for now. And we'll get our spellcasters moving. Let's use our wizard for now. Now, an elf and the wizard can cast spells. The dwarf character, and the barbarian character don't cast spells. So you really only have to deal with one thing. As long as the wizard can see the barbarian and they're about to attack something, say a minion for our spellcaster here, maybe that are standing right in front, like so, the wizard can cast courage, which allows your barbarian to be able to do a better chance of actually hitting. So how does that work? Very simply, normally a barbarian gets 3 attack dice, okay? That's 3 combat dice. But when it comes to casting the spell, when they make their attack, they're now going to get 2 extra combat dice. And you would roll those against the Chaos Warrior, and the Chaos Warrior would defend. Now, for every skull that you get, as I've said before, okay, every skull is potentially a wound. 3 potential wounds, shields mean nothing. And then, of course, your Chaos Warrior would defend against the attack made with the Courage spell. How many defense dice do they get? They get 4. So 4 of these dice, 3 potential wounds. Okay, and I'll just grab this card here so you can see it. So I got 2 monster shields, so I block 2 wounds. So this Dread Warrior takes 1 wound, or 1 body point of damage. Instead of having 3, it now has 2. Okay, the shield, the normal shield, the white shield means nothing, and the skull means nothing, just the monster shields. So that's how it works. That's courage. Pretty simple, not too complicated at all. Now, when would you use this? You're probably not going to use courage unless you're casting it on, say, the barbarian or your dwarf or even potentially your elf. It would be quite silly to use courage on yourself as a wizard, because your chances of actually being successful are quite limited. You've got to remember that your attack bonus or your attack dice for a wizard, if you're using your normal weapon, which is just a dagger, is only 1 of these dice. So adding another 2, 3 is not going to be enough. Not for a Dread Warrior. And generally, it's putting yourself way too much at risk because you don't have that many body points. So you don't want to be using courage on yourself as a wizard. But if you're an elf, a dwarf, or particularly and specifically the barbarian who has a really good attack bonus, then yeah, you want to do that one. Next, Wall of Wrath. This spell may be cast on any one monster, blasting it with flames. It inflicts 1 body point of damage unless the monster can immediately roll a 5 or a 6 using 1 red dice. So it's very, very simple. You're going to cause some damage. So if you are the wizard here, and you're casting a spell like Fire of Wrath, and you want to target the evil sorcerer here, you can do so. It is going to inflict 1 body point of damage, but they must roll 1 6-sided dice. It doesn't matter what their mind points are or anything like that. They're just going to get 1 dice to roll. If they roll a 5 or a 6, okay, they don't take any damage. Okay, so I rolled a 3. The evil sorcerer takes 1 body point of damage. This is really good as a spell when you're dealing with something that's very tough, hard to get at, and you want to have as little chance of them being successful in stopping it. So that's what I would suggest. That's when you want to use that. Next one, Ball of Flame. This is kind of like your fireball, really. So how does your fireball work? Let's just grab these guys and put them in here. We'll create our line, our front line. Ball of Flame. This spell may be cast on any one monster, enveloping it in a ball of fire, inflicting 2 body points of damage. The monster then rolls 2 6-sided dice, 2 red 6-sided dice. For each 5 or 6 rolls, the damage is reduced by 1. So you could cast your Ball of Flame onto the Dread Warrior or even onto the Spellcaster. Probably going to be better to target the Spellcaster because they only, again, it isn't determined. The number of dice you roll isn't determined by their mind points. They're only to get to roll 2 6-sided dice. If they roll a 5 or a 6, they reduce the damage. But potentially you could do 2 body points worth of damage to that Spellcaster. Spellcasters are dangerous. So you roll those. I got a 6 and I got a 2. The 2 means nothing. The 6 means that 1 of those body points is reduced. So instead of doing 2 points of damage, we're only going to do 1 point of damage to our Spellcaster, evil Spellcaster, if we cast Ball of Flame. So a very useful spell for any target that is very, very strong because there's really not a huge chance of success for them. Okay? All right, next one. These are the water spells. Sleep. This spell puts a monster into a deep sleep, so it cannot move, attack, or defend itself. The spell can be broken at once on future turns by a monster rolling a 1 red die for each of its mind points. Okay, so in other words, for every mind point, you'd be rolling one red six-sided dice. If a 6 is rolled, the spell is broken. May not be used against mummies, zombies, or skeletons, but you could use it against potentially a evil sorcerer, a dread warrior, or even a gargoyle. But completely useless if you're trying to use it against something like, in this case, a zombie, a mummy, or a skeleton. But even something like a goblin or an orc would be really useful. So how does this work? If we're dealing with, say, our dread warrior and we're trying to put the dread warrior to sleep, how's that going to look? Well, we look at the mind points for this dread warrior. It has 3, so you need to have 3 6-sided dice that you will roll. And if you roll a 6, okay, as the Zargon player, as the game master, then they don't go to sleep. You've got a reasonable chance of being successful. Okay? The best time to use this spell, sleep spell, is against creatures that have very few mind points. So we roll this. I got a 6, so the dread warrior doesn't go to sleep. But against something like a goblin, for example, if we had a goblin in a play, it would be very different, because goblins only have 1 mind point, so they only get to roll 1 6-sided dice when they're defending against this spell. So this is the time you want to use it. So if I grab a goblin, yeah, there we go, there's a goblin. So if we've got a goblin here and we can see it through here, okay, or we can, line of sight can be blocked by characters, so we've got to be careful about that too. I wasn't describing that very well, wasn't I? So let's just move these guys away. This is going to make it a little bit easier. Okay. Right. Here we go. So we've got our goblin. We want to cast a spell against the goblin. Sleep. Only 1 6-sided dice that you're going to be rolling because it's only got 1 mind point. And I rolled a 1. So there's a 1 in 6 chance that I'll be successful against resisting it. Whereas anything that has more than 1 dice that I get to roll for mind points has got a much better chance. Dread warrior is going to be hard to put to sleep. Probably going to be very hard to put the evil sorcerer to sleep. So you want to be targeting things that, like orcs and goblins are going to be good targets for this. Okay, so that is the sleep spell. Just very quickly, I'm just going to check chat just to see if there's any questions or any comments. Nope. All right, I'm going to keep going. Let's keep moving. There's still a lot to do. Next one. Next water spell. Veil of Mist. Okay. Veil of Mist. This spell may be cast on any one hero, including yourself. On the hero's next move, they may move unseen through spaces that are occupied by monsters. So when is this likely to be useful to you? Well, when monsters block the route. So for example, if we have some heroes that are here, the door has been opened, and we want to get through a space, okay? So any hero, you can cast it on any hero that you can see. So what you would want to do is that when you take your turn, you would move so you can see whoever you want to actually cast the spell on. Veil of Mist is going to work better if you cast it on somebody else rather than yourself. The elf, it's not so bad because the elf is actually reasonably good at attacking. Something like the wizard is probably a very bad idea to try to move past monsters, but you want the barbarian and you want your dwarf to be able to move past monsters so they can get to the target you really want to hit. So what you would do probably in this case is you would have your wizard cast it on the barbarian so that when the barbarian takes their turn and rolls to see how far they can move and get 4 squares, okay, which isn't very far, I can at least go 1, 2 into this space, 3, and if I want to keep going or I want to attack, I can, but I can keep going and try to get to the magic caster. But otherwise they can block up a doorway. So Veil of Mist is really useful for getting past monsters that are tanking. It's not going to come up that often, really, but yeah. So a useful spell better to be used on the dwarf and the barbarian, in my opinion. Okay, next we have Water of Healing. Water of Healing is one of those spells, just like the Potion of Healing, that you really want to have access to if you can, because there's not a lot of different ways that you can employ healing in HeroQuest, so it is a rare commodity. Water of Healing. This spell may be cast on any one hero, including yourself. Contact with this revitalizing water restores up to 4 lost body points, but does not give a hero more than their starting number. So in other words, you get 4 potentially. It is probably a spell that you would definitely want to be able to use on yourself as a wizard if you're down to 1. If you are dealing with something like the barbarian, which has a lot of hit points, and they get reduced quite easily because they're going to be in the front line a lot, then you definitely want to be casting this on them, because 4 extra body points is a big deal. For an elf, they have 6 body points, so it's still very useful to them. And even the dwarf, who has only slightly less than the barbarian. A useful spell for anybody, but you're probably going to use this spell more often on whoever's taking the brunt of the punishment. Air spell. Genie. This spell conjures Genie. This spell conjures up a genie who does one of the following: opens any door on the board, revealing what lies beyond, or uses 5 combat dice to attack any monster within line of sight. So that's what it can do. So how is that going to work for you? Well, the first thing that the genie can do, which is to open any door on the board, revealing what lies beyond. So you would basically grab a door, okay, you would place it down. If there's a door here and it hasn't been opened, then you'd place down an open door to indicate what's in there, and then you would lay out the items in that room. And then of course whatever monsters are in that room would also be there. So maybe there's a table in here and an open sarcophagus, and you lay out that there is a mummy, okay, and a zombie. That's what it can do. The problem is with this option, when you're using the genie, is it's really not that useful, because it's not that hard for you to open the door and find out yourself. It's not really doing anything particularly useful to you. I wouldn't consider that a good use of this spell. The other thing too is, as soon as you do that and you open the door, the monsters can leave the room. You now have created more trouble for yourself that you can't really control that well. And you made it easier for the Zargon player to actually attack you with monsters, rather than open the door, crush what's in that room as quickly as possible, move on. Because remember, heroes go first and Zargon goes last. Really, it's the wandering monsters that are most likely to cause the most trouble for players, rather than what's actually in a room. Unless, of course, there's a lot of monsters in there. So that's the last one that you're probably going to use the most, which is the ability to attack something with 5 combat dice. That's the one you're going to want. So as long as you can see the monster to actually do this, okay, then right, I can now target either the Dread Warrior, the Goblin, or potentially I can target our sorcerer here. I want to go after the Dread Warrior. Right now I'm feeling like that's probably the biggest problem, because it's right smack in the way. So I then use my genie, roll some dice. I get 3 skulls, which means that's 3 potential wounds. And of course the monster then defends with their dice, whatever monster that might be. And in the case of the Dread Warrior, okay, the Dread Warrior is this one here. I just want to push this door out of the way a little bit. The Dread Warrior gets 4 dice to defend with, 3 potential wounds, and I get 1 shield. 1 monster shield. The other shields are hero shields. They don't count. So now your Dread Warrior has just taken 2 points of damage, 2 body points of damage. This is the one you're going to use for making an attack. Ultimately, it's probably the most useful. The other option, I can't even think of a situation where it's an advantage to you to do so. It would actually be a disadvantage for you to do so. It's like a trap. A trap and a spell. Sorry, I'm just going to drink some water. I see somebody in chat. I am looking briefly at the chat every once in a while. I need to get the new version of this game. Well, hello, Rook0. For those of you who don't know, Rook0 runs a channel. He does commission artwork. He does it live. He draws stuff up. You should go and check him out if you haven't been there before. And yes, and I believe that Rook's art is in the new Sagas game that Dennis is putting out. So I have been promoting that a little bit on my channel because Dennis is one of my buddies and I like what Rooksa does as well. So I thought, yes, even though it was a Kickstarter, and I don't usually promote Kickstarters, the only way I'm going to be promoting a Kickstarter on my channel is if I'm friends with somebody or with buddies, because that ain't going to happen otherwise. I'm just not interested. You got to go get some lunch, no problems. Yes, let the monsters free. Free and run free. Run free. No, we don't want to do that. Okay, let's keep going. Let's do the next spell. Air spell. Swift Wind. This spell may be cast on any one hero, including yourself. Its powerful burst of energy enables that hero to roll twice as many red dice as normal the next time they move. Okay, so what does that mean? How is that going to be employed? If you want to use it, you can, and it allows you to move further. Right now, all you can do is use 2 red dice to move. So what you would do is you would cast the spell on yourself if you want to move really, really fast. And instead of just rolling 2, you're going to roll 4 dice. Okay? Oops. So we roll, and we get a grand total of, that's 8. Well, that's actually 13, isn't it? There's 13 in total. So I can move 13. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You can move all the way around here if you wanted to. It's as simple as that. Very, very simple. It's really useful if you need to be able to catch up to your group really fast. Okay? Sometimes if you get separated, that could be a problem. When is the most useful time to use this? When you're dealing with something that you need to be able to escape. Because in HeroQuest there's no such thing as opportunity attacks or attacks of opportunity, if you need to leave a space and get away, you can. And you might find, well, hang on, the problem is rolling 2 of these dice. It's never going to give me enough distance. Because what the monster has is a static movement. Monsters in this game have static movement. And a Dread Warrior has a static movement of 7. And the smaller the creatures are, the higher that number tends to be. Goblins can move 10 squares. So if you need to get away from a battle and you're engaged, since there's no attacks of opportunity, you don't have to worry about leaving a threatened space or them attacking as you leave. Swift Wind. You cast that spell so you can get them away. It's a really good escape spell, or just getting yourself to join up with the rest of the group when the battle is too far away. If the battle is too far away and you need to get closer to it because you're separated from everybody else, this might be a good thing. I think ultimately Swift Wind is an escape spell, in my opinion. Air spell, last one. Tempest. This spell creates a small whirlwind that envelopes one monster of your choice. That monster then misses its next turn. This is a very strong spell. So if you are having a situation where you've got various monsters engaged in a battle, okay, and you want to cast the spell, who would you cast it on? Am I going to cast it on the Goblin, if I'm the Wizard, or the Dread Warrior, or this Evil Sorcerer? Well, I want to stop the Sorcerer casting one of their spells. Tempest is a really good spell for doing that. While they're not taking a turn, the rest of your party can then wail on them and take them down. Okay? It's gangbang time, basically. Okay, Earth spell. Rock Skin. This spell may be cast on any one hero, including yourself. That hero may throw 1 extra combat dice when defending. The spell is broken when the hero suffers a 1 body point of damage. So, what does that look like? You can cast it on yourself. It's not going to be very useful for you as a wizard unless you are in trouble and you can't get away. If you can't move away, which you probably can, because again, no attacks of opportunity, you're more likely going to want to use this spell for your dwarf and your elf, who have mediocre defense, but also the barbarian. Okay, if casting it on somebody else is going to probably be more useful. So what you would do is, instead of them having, for example, the barbarian would normally have 2 defense. You cast the spell, they get 1 more dice when they're doing their defending. You're more likely to cast Rock Skin on somebody who's currently engaged in a battle right up close in melee, okay, rather than somebody's dealing with attacks at distance. But there's nothing wrong with casting it on yourself and just giving yourself the benefit, because it lasts for as long as you don't take any damage. As long as you don't lose a body point, you've got that extra defense. Now for a wizard, wizards get 2 defense and they would have 3. So if you are a wizard, let's just pull this down. Almost all characters in this game have a defense of 2 unless they have some special equipment or armor. So going from 2 for your defense to 3 is always a good thing. So yeah. But again, you're probably more likely to use it against something that, against one of your other heroes who needs to do them to it's going to sustain the most amount of attacks. All right, so that's that one. Next, Earth Spell. Pass Through Rock. This spell may be cast on any one hero, including yourself. The hero may then move through walls on their next move. They may move through as many walls as their dice roll allows. Caution: there are shaded areas on each quest map that indicate solid rock. If a hero ends their movement on one of those areas, they are trapped forever. There is a risk. So if you're going to use Pass Through Wall, you probably want to be able to use it in a situation where you can't get to where you need to be easily, or you need to be able to escape and get through something. So for example, what happens if suddenly there is a gargoyle in the room and the barbarian and the dwarf are really in a bad spot? Okay, it isn't going to be very easy for them to get out. Maybe it's appeared behind and literally now there's no way out. What you can do is you could cast the spell Pass Through Rock to allow one of your heroes to actually escape that situation. So maybe for the barbarian, they would roll their movement. Once you've cast the spell on them, they get 6, and you would move through the bookcase. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Where are you at? About 5 there. So that you get out of a bad situation, because you don't want to be attacked from multiple angles in a bad situation like this. And we leave the dwarf to die, because dwarves are replaceable. Do you know what I mean? But I mean, that's the basic gist of it. It's like you're probably going to be using this spell to escape a really bad situation. Or if you've got yourself into a situation where there's lots and lots of traps and you can't get past them without triggering more of them, you're going to lose too many hit points, then you're going to use Pass Through Rock to escape. There is another way you can look at this for Pass Through Rock, and that is, let's just get rid of this door for a second. Being open, and we'll get rid of this door. Now imagine nothing's been laid out in the room, but there is a door here, okay? But you're pretty sure that this is the room where the big bad is. I've laid everything out. That's not normally what happens, right? So you decide, well, we want to get the jump on them in some way, and we would like to move through into that room very, very quickly, okay? And rather than going and moving through a door and all the rest, it's just going to be a pain in the butt. So let's actually circumvent that. So you could cast Pass Through Rock on either the dwarf or the barbarian or even the elf, and have them just walk straight into the room, reveal everything and the monsters, and if they want to, they can step back out. You can go in, place everything down, step back out. The door is still closed because you haven't opened the door and you know exactly what's there. I know that sounds odd, but there is a point to this. Now you know what you're dealing with. You can now prepare yourselves. You can have the whole group actually make sure they're prepared by ensuring they're close to the door and ready for the battle. You can even decide if you're actually really strapped for resources. You could decide this last battle, this last room where we think the main villain is going to be too hard for us. Because the largest room tends to be the room where the biggest problem is. Okay, even no matter how you look at the game board, it's usually the biggest problem is the biggest room. Not always the case, but now you can decide, well, actually, we're gonna fail the quest. Let's just continue and get out of here. We're better off not to open the door because we can't actually defeat the monsters. And if we die, we lose all our stuff. So let's just leave and we'll just redo it and start again. That's completely legitimate as a play option in HeroQuest. I know a lot of people don't consider this, but you can decide to bug out. Because if you return to the staircase, the quest or adventure ends, but you retain everything that you collected so far. And if you're all on one body point or just a couple of body points, that's probably a good idea. So it's a really good spell for determining the risk of a particular room before you open the door. Because unless the door is opened, the monsters can't come through. Okay, next one. Earth spell. Heal body, another healing spell. This spell may be cast on any one hero, including yourself. Its magical power immediately restores up to 4 lost body points, but does not give a hero more than their starting number. It's exactly like the last spell I was talking about. So, again, I'm not going to go over it too much. When you cast the spell, you're basically getting 4 body points, and it's useful to any character, no matter what. Okay. Let's go back to here just for a second while I set up for the dread spells. The dread spells are for the evil spellcaster. Get the wizard out of trouble. Dwarves are recyclable. Exactly, dwarves are recyclable. They are an everlasting resource. You don't need to worry about them, eh? I'm only playing with you people. I don't really mean that. I don't really mean that. Anyway, let's open up our... I'm just moving stuff around because I'm aware that if I don't, it's going to make it really difficult to do the next one. And I need to make sure I have enough space for everything so that it's going to work. And I think I've just about got it where it needs to be. I'm going to move everything back a little bit. And we've got various monsters and creatures in here to deal with. And so, yes, okay, we're just about ready. Bum, bum, bum. Okay. I need a drink of water too. If you have any feedback on HeroQuest or any questions, by all means, feed them through. I'm quite happy to deal with that. Oh. Okay. Right, dread spells. You are Zargon. You have the dread spells, the evil spells, the spells for the evil character. You are going to throw down on the players who are playing the heroes. How does that look? How do these spells work? Okay, first off, dread spell number 1. Summon Undead. This spell conjures up a group of undead to surround and protect your spellcaster. Roll a 6-sided dice, and if I roll a 1 or a 2 on that 6-sided dice, I'm going to get 4 skeletons. If I roll a 3 or a 4, I get 3 skeletons and 2 zombies. If I get 5 or 6, I get 2 zombies and 2 mummies. So now we can just eliminate this because we don't need them. Our spellcaster produces its own army. So we roll our dice. I got a 4, so that is 3 skeletons. And I can place them pretty much wherever I need them to be. I also get 2 zombies. Choosh. Another skeleton. And I get to place them pretty much wherever I would like them. As long as I can see where they're going, I can put them there. I could put one over here. I'm pretty sure I can do that. Okay. And is it 3 skeletons and 2 zombies? And I've got 2 zombies and 1 more skeleton. And we can't put it there, but we can put it here. So or I can even block the doorway if I wanted to and put one here. Right, so now I've created my army for the spell. Very useful as a spell. If you have the spell, and you probably want to have the spell, make sure you tend to use it first. Okay, well, it'll be one of the first spells you use, because now you can eliminate part of the problem of not having some sort of defense. Wizards that throw spells down aren't really that good at fighting necessarily, so being able to summon some forces is a good idea. Okay, all right, so that's the first thing. I guess the question you'll be asking is, once I summon these monsters, do the monsters get to take their turn? And I think the answer is yes. Yes, that is the idea. The idea is you cast the spell, you create your zombies, skeletons, or mummies, and then they wreak havoc on your party. Next, summon orcs. This spell conjures up a group of orcs to surround and protect the spellcaster. Roll a 6-sided dice. This is this one here. On a 1, 2, or a 3, you get 4 orcs. On a 5 or a 6, you get 5 orcs. And on a 6, you get 6 orcs. So we're not dealing with zombies, skeletons, or mummies now. Now we're dealing with orcs. And it's going to determine how many orcs we get. Again, roll that dice to determine how many you get. I get 3. So I get 4 orcs. And I position those orcs where I think they're going to do the most amount of damage and be of most benefit to me. So probably block the doorway would be helpful, but also stop anybody who's in the room already. I want to engage them so that they have to fight something. And I have 1 more, and we get 4 in total, so I should be able to find. Yep, there we go. And I can stick one here behind the wizard if I wanted to as well. Okay, so I've tried to engage as many targets as possible. In fact, this might even be better to be placed here, because now I can engage the wizard and the elf. Okay, and you need to be able to see where they're going to go down, so when you place them down and then they attack. Pretty simple, not that hard. Next one. Sleep. Works a little bit the same as the last sleep spell that was used by the heroes. Sleep. This spell puts any one hero into a deep sleep. A sleeping hero is unable to move, attack, or defend themselves, which is really bad. The spell can be broken immediately or on future turns by the hero rolling 1 red die for each of their mind points. If a 6 is rolled, the spell is broken. So in this case, if I wanted to cast this spell on the wizard and put them to sleep, giving me a better chance of eliminating them from the battle, what I would do is I would, based off the number of mind points, which they have 6, so I would have to roll 6 of these. There we go, there's 6. If I roll a 6 on any of these dice, the spell doesn't work. Right, I rolled a 6, 2 6s, 3 6s, 3 6s, so the spell doesn't work on the wizard. So not necessarily the best target. It would be great if it worked on the wizard. Who you're going to go after is whoever has the least number of body points, okay, as Zargon. What you want to do is you want to pick on the person who just is probably going to wind up going to sleep, and it's usually the barbarian. So what you want to do is eliminate this. Barbarians can do a lot of damage up close, so what you do is you target your barbarian. As long as you can see them, I can see him, I cast the spell. As long as I don't get a 6, okay, he'll be asleep. I rolled a 6, so he stays awake. It's still really useful because, you know, potentially they could stay asleep for a number of rounds or turns, which means it's much easier to do damage to them with your monsters. If you can't defend, then any wounds they do are going to go straight through. Okay, next. Rust. This spell causes 1 metal sword or helmet to become so thin, brittle, and useless that can never be used again. Not effective against artifacts. So anybody who's wearing that kind of equipment, okay, that's the one you want to target. So if your dwarf or your barbarian or even your elf are wearing a helmet, or they have a sword or any kind of weapon that you can rust and get rid of, I would always go for their weapon, because unless they have backup weapons, then you pretty much put them out of commission. Normally what will happen is when you're Zargon and you're casting your spells, the weapon that does the most amount of damage is probably the weapon that character hero is using right now. And it's probably the one that you want to get rid of as soon as possible. There is no saving throw. There's nothing to roll. It just happens. You pick the thing, you decide on what it is, and it's gone. So go after their weapon. Next, Lightning Bolt. This spell may be cast on a horizontal, vertical, or diagonal direction. The bolt will travel in a straight line until it strikes a wall or closed door. It inflicts 2 body points of damage on all heroes or monsters that stand in its path. So in other words, as soon as you can line up enough heroes, this is the time you want to use it, right? So for example, if we have the dwarf here and the barbarian is here, and we've got a couple of monsters behind us, we might decide, well, it's worth us to actually just fire our lightning bolt down here. We might wind up frying our orcs, but we'll also get the heroes as well. And so they're going to take 2 body points of damage. There's no defending, so the lightning bolt would just reduce the barbarian, the dwarf, and the wizard by 2 body points. And a wizard only has 2 body points anyway. So it's a really good spell if you can line them up. It can be a bit hard to make it all work. Positioning is going to be vital, as always. But if they do line themselves up, perfect time to use Lightning Bolt. Okay, you will probably kill those orcs, though. The next dread spell, Firestorm. This spell creates a room full of fire that inflicts 3 body points of damage on all heroes and monsters in the same room with the spellcaster. The spellcaster is unaffected. All victims immediately roll 2 red dice, 2 6-sided red dice. For each 5 or 6 roll, the damage is reduced by 1 point. You can't use it in a corridor, so it has to be in a room. So a good time to use this is when a lot of the heroes have made it into the room. Okay, when they are primarily a big, huge target, this is the time you want to use it. And of course, to resist it, so that you don't take a whole bunch of damage, even with 3 body points of damage, think about it. At least whatever heroes are in here are going to take at least 1 body point of damage. Okay, you're going to hurt them at least. You're probably going to kill your orcs if you use it while the orcs are there, because orcs only have 1 body point. But you could potentially do more. It's probably better to use this when you have high body point monsters, where losing a body point or 2 isn't going to be a huge problem. Okay, if you've got like a gargoyle and some dread warriors in the room, it's probably going to be a lot easier to actually have them survive. But 3 body points is a lot. So, and because it doesn't affect the spellcaster in this case, good chance of success. So what you're going to do is every character rolls 2 6-sided dice. It doesn't matter how many mind points they have or body points. It's always 2 red-sided 2 6-sided dice that are red. And for a 5 or a 6 for the barbarian takes 3 body points in this case. The elf rolls, they get a 6 and a 5, so they stop 2 of those, but they still take 1 body point. The dwarf has to roll. Whoops, I've just lost a dice into the yonder. Rolls a 5 and a 1, so the 5 will stop 1 of those body points, but the dwarf still takes 2 body points of damage. It's a really useful spell, okay? But you've got to get your characters in the same room with you. When you need to clear them out a little bit, this is the time to use it. I would still recommend using this as sort of like a first attack spell, a first spell that you actually unload, while your monsters still have plenty of hit points. Because remember, the gargoyle and the dread warrior still need to roll as well, and they have to roll exactly the same number of dice. So they've still got the same chance, yeah, in terms of whether they get 5s and 6s. Just let me grab this dice that I've managed to roll off into the yonder. Oh, there we go. There it is. Okay. I'll switch that back out. Sorry about that. Drink of water. Next. Fear. This spell causes any one hero to become as fearful as they may. Sorry. This spell causes any one hero to become so fearful that they may only use one attack dice. The spell can be broken by the hero on a future turn by rolling one red dice for each of their mind points. If a 6 is rolled, the spell is broken. Okay. Now you don't get to roll it initially. So who do you want to target with fear? Probably the barbarian. Okay, because normally they get to roll 3 attack dice. And if you can reduce that down to rolling just 1 attack dice, okay, that's really useful. Okay, because they're less likely to be able to do any damage. It can be useful, to cast it against something like the dwarf or the elf. But your barbarian is your key target. That's who you want to go after. Why is that? It's because on future rolls, not the first time, because it's gonna reduce their attack the first time. But when they do get to actually make future rolls, which will happen, it's going to break the spell. And you'll notice that the mind points for the barbarian are only 2. So they only get to roll 2 of these, okay? Rather than the other characters who tend to get a lot more. So, unless they roll, there we go, a 6, no 6, still only get to roll attack with 1 dice. So fear is a barbarian tool, really. Go after the barbarian, okay? If you want to get the dwarf and the elf, because the barbarian's already eliminated, or the barbarian's in a different location, fair enough. But fear is a barbarian tool, particularly when they have a lot of gear on them and better weapons. Next one, escape. Sorry, people, I'm just going to move that out of the way. So escape. This spell allows the spellcaster to disappear and instantly teleport to a secret destination known only by Zargon. This safe place is marked on the quest map. So there's always a mark for the safe space, or there should be. You cast the spell, and if you notice that your defenses are down because your monsters have been whittled out and the players are about to break through and take you out, you've got no more front line, then you cast this spell and you escape, okay, to your safe place. Next, command. This spell puts any one hero under Zargon's control. The spell can be broken immediately or on a future turn by the hero rolling 1 red die for each of their mind points. If a 6 is rolled, the spell is broken. However, until the spell is broken, Zargon on their turn can move the hero as a monster and attack other heroes. So you get to actually control them on your turn as Zargon. Very useful. Who would you want to target with this? Again, primary target is going to be the barbarian because they only get 2 mind points, so resisting it is going to be a bit harder for them to do. Elf and dwarf, not quite so bad. They don't have quite so many mind points. You probably don't want to worry about the wizard. The wizard's probably not going to be affected by this, so don't even bother. And they're going to get to make that roll straight away. So if you can get the barbarian and control them, since they can do the most amount of damage generally, and the least likely to succeed, I rolled no 6s. Okay, so we do that immediately when we cast the spell, and now when it rolls around to Zargon's turn, the barbarian is now one of our monsters. Essentially, we get to move them around and do their own thing. Now, I guess there might be some questions about this card, like, what about when it comes around to the barbarian's turn? Does the barbarian get to take their turn as normal? Because does the spell or the card actually indicate whether that eliminates the hero taking their turn? I don't know that I think it's going to come down to the table and the group deciding how this is adjudicated, because I can see there being a question about that. I don't honestly know the answer to that. Again, I think it's going to come down to you decide how that's going to work. Anyway, I think the spirit of the spell is that you don't get to take your turn necessarily. Anyway, who knows? Who knows? Cloud of Dread. This spell paralyzes all heroes located in the same room or corridor. A paralyzed hero is unable to move, attack, or defend themselves. The spell can be broken at once or on future turns by turns by each victim rolling 1 red-sided dice for each of their mind points. By rolling a 6, the hero frees themselves. So what you want to do is you want to make sure they're all in the same corridor or all in the same room. Okay, and that's when you're going to cast the spell. So let's just move a few monsters in here. And if they all manage to get into the same room, Cloud of Dread, this is the time you want to do that. Okay, and if you can get all of them, you can. Of course, it's based off the number of mind points they have, but with the Barbarian, there's a very good chance that you will succeed, as long as they don't roll a 6. I rolled a 6, the Barbarian succeeds. But you would roll for every single character, yeah? The Dwarf has 3 of these, so you'd roll for the Dwarf, and as long as the Dwarf doesn't get a 6, no 6. Alright, so now they are paralyzed, no moving, attacking, or defending themselves. With something like the Elf gets 4 mind points, so you'd roll 4 dice. I got no 6s, so you've just paralyzed the Elf. And the Wizard gets 6 dice for mind. You know, they've got 6 mind points, so 6 dice, roll that. Chances are you're not going to paralyze them, but you still try. And I did get a 6, or got a couple, yeah, I got 1 6. So we're not going to be paralyzed as a wizard. So this is the spell where you use it when everybody is in the same room, but you also want to have monsters around. If you don't have monsters that can actually now inflict pain and destruction on the heroes, it's going to be kind of a waste of time, because you can only attack one character at a time with your wizard or your evil spellcaster. So you need to have some other minions around to be able to wail down on them. Otherwise, this is going to be a waste of time, because what's going to happen is that it's going to roll round to their turn. They're going to get to roll this check again, and they could potentially roll a 6. So make sure you have some minions. Okay, next one. Ball of Flame. Very much like the last one I described. This spell may be cast on any one hero, enveloping them in a ball of fire. It inflicts 2 body points of damage. The hero then rolls 2 red dice, or 2 6-sided red dice. For each 5 or 6 roll, the damage is reduced by 1 point. Ball of Flame is the spell you want to be targeting against the wizard, because they have so few hit points. But if you can't target them because you can't see them, then go after whoever is either the greatest threat. Usually that'll be the Barbarian if they're right up in your face, but if they're not, spellcasters. Spellcasters can get past front lines with their spells, so you probably want to go after them first. And because they only ever get to roll 2 6-sided dice, and it's not based on mind points at all, there's a good chance you might succeed. I rolled a 5 and a 4, unfortunately don't succeed. One of those body points is going to be reduced. So instead of do 2 body points on, say, the Elf or the Wizard, I'm now only going to do 1 body point. But there's a good chance it will succeed, so you want to target them first. Next one. Tempest. This spell creates a small whirlwind that envelopes one hero of your choice. That hero then misses their next turn. So there's no saving throw, there's no mind points and red dice involved, there's no combat dice defending, it just works. So you just pick somebody and put them out of commission. This is the sort of thing where you probably want to target whoever's causing the most trouble for you. That might be the Barbarian, but it could well be the Wizard if they're casting spells. So if you can eliminate them casting spells for a turn, that's always really good, right? So that is all of the spells available to you in HeroQuest. And I think most of what I've said is relatively obvious in terms of how you would approach it and use them and how they work. I've tried to demonstrate them as best I can. I've tried to explain when the best time to use them are. There will, of course, be other exceptions to that. It's been a long time since I played HeroQuest, so although I've played a lot, I haven't played recently, so that's a shame. I'm still trying to get my family to... The problem is my family is now in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, and 50s, so it's a little tricky to get everybody in the same space and let's play a game we played as kids and teenagers. Okay, so what do we got here in the chat here? Zombies. Yes, just what the players need. Extra zombies and mummies. Exactly, they do. Yeah, whacking them on the head doesn't wake them up. No, the criteria for the criteria for the sleep spells, as you've just mentioned, whacking them on the head doesn't wake them up. Okay, so you can whack them on the head as many times as you like. Look at it this way. Think about it this way. If you were asleep and somebody came up to you and whacked you on the head, would you still be asleep or would you wake up? I think you'd still be asleep. Maybe permanently asleep though. Do you know what I mean? So it's not... One of the problems I think with Dungeons & Dragons 5e and how sleep and waking somebody up works is if you do damage, you wake them up. In this game, if you hit them, you don't wake them up because they're probably unconscious. They're not just sleeping, they are unconscious because they got hit in the head. That's really what you're dealing with here. So it's not a break in immersion or anything like that. It's not even a break of reality. It actually makes much more sense that if you are asleep and you get smacked by something, you're probably not waking up anytime soon. Ah, dear. No conga line of PCs if you don't want to be shocked. Yeah. Yes. Look, the the fact that there's no opportunity attacks in this game is just to simplify things. It's like cover rules, really. Cover rules are super simple in a game like this. Really, you know, blocking line of sight is relatively basic and simple as well. So yeah, I'm going to end today. I will tell you, those of you who are still here, what I'm doing next week. I'll tell you what I'm doing tomorrow, and I'll tell you what I'm doing next week as part of my rules sort of coverage. So tomorrow I'm going to be remastering or fixing the fairy, the playable fairy for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. I'll also be doing the plasmoid. The plasmoid will not stay the plasmoid. I'm going to have to call it something else. It is not Creative Commons. It is not part of the SRD. So I would be breaching copyright if I were to use that name. I will give it a different name, but essentially it would be the plasmoid that I'm adjusting. Okay, that's what I wanted to do. And Calrel has got an off-topic discussion. That's all right, Calrel. I will answer your question. I just want to let you know what's happening next week. For those of you who are unaware, HeroQuest is one of the most modified and homebrewed and house-ruled game you could imagine. For a board game, it is well and truly house-ruled up the kaboo. So next week, I'll be doing my last HeroQuest video or live stream, and we'll be going through many different homebrew or house rules that you might want to employ in your game if you're playing HeroQuest. It's an opportunity for you guys to share your ideas. People have already done that with me. They've already been sharing lots and lots of different ideas with me about how they would like to see their game look. And I plan to do the same thing here. Okay, so next week, HeroQuest, home rules, and house rules. I'll be covering all of those. I will demonstrate them. I won't just talk about them. I will also explain why you might want to use them or not. Calrel, here we go. You have an off-topic question before I disappear. But at some point, could we do an undead monster creation stream? Calrel, yes, we can. I have no problems with that. Do you know, every week I do monster lore. I cover one of Esper's, usually it's about 3, 4, 5 minutes. I cover one of the monster lore, one of the monsters from Esper's Emporium of Esoterica. So I do that. And then ultimately what happens after that is we do a workshop. And this is where we actually build and create monsters. Now I've been building a lot of tools recently. We've done monster societies, we've got to do monster reproduction, and I think people want a table that covers like what you would do with the monster parts to create or make something. Your players are going to want to turn it into something, right? I want to make that table as well. And I think at that point we're ready to just move on and make monsters. So Calrel, I would imagine in at least the next month, if you come in and we're doing the workshop and you say, look, can we make this type of monster? We'll use the tables that I've created that are up on Patreon. I'll use them in the live stream and we'll build an undead monster. I have no problems with doing that. People just don't request very many things. You know, I very rarely do I get somebody who says, since we're doing our monster workshop and we're going to make a monster, can we make an undead monster? People don't usually say that to me. But if you say, look, can we make a mega dinosaur monster? Look, fine. I have no problems with that. We'll use the tables. We'll do that. So absolutely, that's a big yes. That can happen. And probably it's going to happen once all the tools are built. And I would say in the next month, we'll be finished with them. I don't think there's anything left to make after that, frankly, that I can think of. And I'm happy to do that. So yes, big yes, Calrel. We'll be making lots of monsters. In a month's time, that's all we'll do every week is make a new monster. We were doing that last year. Have you played HeroQuest? Yes, 72%. Cool. Glad to hear it. No, 27%. Hopefully some of you will consider it out of 11 votes. Great. All right. So now you know what I'm doing tomorrow, and now you know what I'm doing next week. HeroQuest, Homebrew, and House Rules in a week's time. Same time, same day, same bat channel. Anyway, thank you to everybody who's been here watching and listening. I do appreciate it. I know that this seems very outside of the idea of tabletop role-playing games, but honestly, I'm going to show you why HeroQuest can become one of the easiest tabletop role-playing games you've ever come across. It's got all the mechanics there. It's nice and simple. It's easy for your kids to play and for you. So, yeah. It is a tabletop role-playing game as far as I'm concerned. It's the very first one that I really played properly. So thank you to my patrons who support me on Patreon. I do appreciate it. Without you, it's not possible to run these. I want to thank everybody who took part in the poll today. Thank you for doing so. I want to thank those people in chat, Calrel, Fred Huber, who's a patron. Really appreciate Fred Huber being here. He shows up for almost all of my live streams, which is crazy, but I do appreciate it a lot. And Rooksa0, who also jumped in. Thank you for being here. So wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And maybe it's all right to try out HeroQuest and incorporate that as your go-to tabletop role-playing game. Maybe you can do that. Till next time, keep rolling those 20s.